This week I'd like to chat about stories. I absolutely love a good story. I always have. As a young boy, I grew up on the Hardy Boys. I collected all of them, which led to owning well over 100 at some point. I wanted to be just like Frank and Joe Hardy, who along with their sidekicks, Chet, Phil, and Biff, yep, classic names, right? Who constantly found themselves wrapped up in an adventure and action, solving mystery after mystery. The intrigue and suspense of each novel kept me riveted and obviously broke. Then in high school, I was introduced to some of the classics. Remember Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, the central characters in Tolkien's The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series? A classic good versus evil, coming-of-age journey and pilgrimage of self-discovery? Through the pitfalls of greed, selfishness, coveting, power, and war? These stories showed me not only the perils of giving in to one's internal sin nature, but the merits of choosing to do good and to be good no matter the costs. Then there was The Lord of the Flies, William Golding's compelling story about a group of teenage boys stranded on an uninhabited island, learning to deal with the social challenges of power, influence, control, morality, and groupthink. This story taught me something about community and serving the interest of others before your own. Of course, it also gave me nightmares at times when I envisioned the pig's head mounted on a sharpened stick and swarming with scavenging flies. Do you remember that? The next novel I remember reading was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, who used the main character Atticus Finch to spotlight issues of racism, classism, prejudice, and intolerance in the American South. This story opened the world to me and helped me to see beyond my limited perspective growing up in the privileged suburbs of Ottawa. Of course, anything by Shakespeare was more hate than love. Can I get a witness? Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, King Lear, Hamlet, and Macbeth. But that's probably more to do with my stage in life at that time, and especially my impatience with Shakespeare's Old English. I'm sure there are many people out there who have similar feelings about good old William's many stories, right? Now, some of these lessons I didn't really learn until years later, but I never forgot the stories that told them, that opened my eyes to them, that helped me to broaden my horizons. When I was also in high school, I came across some other stories that came alive to me. The young righteous King Josiah, who, beginning at age 8, led his country in a national revival, turning their hearts back to God. The brave, truth-telling Queen Esther, who saved her people from certain death by risking her own life. The fearful yet impulsive young Peter, who stepped out with courage and walked on water because he put his trust in Jesus. The forgiving and gracious father, who ran after his wayward son and welcomed him home with a party to end all parties. In fact, as I look back on all the stories that I've heard, that might actually be my favorite one of all time. It's simple, yet deeply profound and moving. And of course, entirely about our grace-filled Heavenly Father, who pursues us no matter how far we try to run from Him. You know, God is the great storyteller, and we can read His stories when we open the pages of the Bible. We are drawn to the narratives of the various characters in this story by learning how they spoke against injustice at just the right time, about how they refused to bow to peer pressure when it was demanded of them, about how they walked on water even though they were afraid, or about how they traveled from town to town telling stories about Jesus even at the risk of losing their own lives. But the cool thing about God's story is that it isn't just contained in the Bible. It's continuing to be written every moment of every day by people just like you and people just like me. We're all part of God's story, like Noah, Deborah, Ruth and David, Esther and Josiah, and Peter and Mary, Timothy and Phoebe, characters that we meet in the pages of the Bible. Just like them, we all have a role to play in this story. Now, I need to pause there for a moment just to allow that to sink in for a second, just to think about that. To me, it's absolutely mind-blowing that God, who created the universe and spoke time and space into existence, is interested in including us in the unfolding of His story. I use a word to describe this invitation by God to be part of His story, and that word is calling. He's inviting, or He's calling, all of us to love Him, to serve Him, and to rep Him in the world, and specifically in our own circles of influence. We are all called to live out that story in a way that shines the spotlight fully and powerfully on Jesus. This story is not about us. It's always about Jesus. And it's that process of discovering how we can live out that calling in practical ways that we specialize in at Masters. I believe that Masters is a place where students are able to discover their divine design, where they're able to sort out their calling through engaging in our programs, in our community, in our classes, and in our chapels, and in the conversations with professors and staff who have given their lives to walking with students along this pathway of discovery. How do we explore our call? How do we know if we're on the right path? How do we bring the very best of ourselves, our interests, our likes, our hobbies, our passions, and give them to God to use in His story? Our goal at Masters is to cultivate a relationally engaging, academically challenging, and spiritually transforming community where we are able to grow and become more like Christ. We want Masters to be a place where you can be at home, to explore your calling, grow in your faith, develop lasting friendships, and become everything that God is calling you to be. I believe that when calling is discovered and passion is ignited, there's no telling what God will do through you. I think about some of Jesus' first words when He stepped into His full purpose and began His ministry life. His words were words of invitation. Leave, abandon, and embrace something brand new and follow me. Leave behind your own intentions and your own desires and come change the world with me. Jesus made it clear that to be part of His story, you don't need a specific heritage, background, family, skill set, wealth, friendship group, whatever. There were no conditions, no membership dues, no rules. Just an open invitation to be part of His story and to connect people to the greatest story ever told. That's an amazing invitation. So we all have a story, and I'm curious to know yours. This week at Masters, in digital format of course, we've been talking about calling stories. I'm inspired when I hear the stories of our students and how they've chosen to follow Jesus. I love hearing how they believe that God has uniquely shaped them to be part of kingdom-centered ministry initiatives. They see the world and imagine all the possibilities and all the creative ways that God can use them for His purposes and His glory. They are living proof of our slogan, start here and go anywhere. And I'm confident in saying today that our graduates, past, present, and future, are educated, equipped, and empowered to be story writers for Jesus. In fact, that was the name of this year's graduating class. If we can help you, anyone of any age and any stage, to pursue that invitation, I want you to know that we're here for you. We'd love to help guide you through the storybook process. Just like these books that I've read back in high school that helped shape my convictions and my beliefs, I have no doubt that it will be the story of Jesus in your life that will help influence the life of someone else someday. So, if you have any questions about calling, about this Jesus invitation, we would be honored to walk with you through a journey of discovery. Consider this your invitation to be part of our story, and together, let's tell great stories about Jesus. Thanks for watching this week's President's Perspective.